Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. My name is Mush Ali. I'm a director and founder at 110 Associates. I'm really excited to bring you today Caroline, who is a co-founder of the True Partnership. We're going to be discussing everything to do about executive coaching and the value it brings to people and their careers, something I'm really passionate about. I've been really interested in finding out about as I've got to know Caroline. Caroline, do you want to give the audience a background on yourself and everything about the True Partnership? And actually, thank you for joining. Right.
Thank you for inviting me. Yep, so True Partnership, it was co-founded by myself and Tom, and we both have finance and specifically hedge fund backgrounds, and we're just extremely passionate about people development, executive coaching, and the power it can have. And due to our backgrounds, we found a lot of popularity in the kind of hedge fund, private equity, financial services space. So yes,
How long have you been going for now?
Yeah, so the business actually began in 2018, but we've really kind of gathered a lot of momentum in kind of 2022 and this year. And there's now actually 17 of us across the EMEA region. Everyone has slightly different specialisms, sweet spots that they operate in, but predominantly we do four things. We do executive coaching, which is one-on-one. Yep. We do performance coaching for investment professionals. Yep. We do team coaching, which is a completely different beast. As we all know, we've all worked in teams and they're quite complex organisms. And then learning and development. So that can be anything from like a one-off workshop, or it could be like a 9 to 12 month like leadership development program. And a lot of those, you know, every company is different. They want slightly different things. The gaps in terms of their leadership will be different. So we're often building those from the ground up and co-creating them with our clients, which is always a really fun process, actually.
Thank you for that, Caroline, because that, as I got to know you and I see the work that you're doing in the industry, it kind of really resonated with a lot of my clients, the people that I deal with, a lot of the candidates that I also talk to. How did you get into executive coaching? How did it all? What's your background, and how did it all kind of come together for you?
Yeah, so you know, I went off to university, kind of not really knowing what to do. So I studied business and then specialised in finance in my final year. I did a sandwich degree actually, so I did a year at HSBC. So I kind of got that taste for finance, and then after graduating. And with a bit of travelling thrown in the middle, went into the city and just kind of fell into finance almost. But it was such a great foundation. I think as a 20-year-old, like you're put through boot camp, you know how it is. I'm sure.
Did you go investment banking or did you go straight into hedge fund? What was your?
No, I was on the sales side first, and then moved into the hedge fund space and spent the last 6 years of my career. So I did 10 years in finance altogether, and the last 6 were on the trading and in the trading and sourcing team at Davis & Kempner. So yeah, it was a really, really valuable experience, and you know, I really enjoyed it. But then I got to around 30 and something wasn't quite right. And for me, it was almost like I went through a bit of a personal awakening, and I started to think, okay, is this really the seat that I should be sat in? And started to do some exploration of my own into kind of like different vocations. And somewhere along that journey, so an old colleague actually in my first job out of university offered me a coaching session. So we did the 90 minutes, and then at the end of it, he was like, "So you're interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, where did you do your training? This is amazing. Like, I want to learn more about this." So that was like 2018. So I did my qualification on the side whilst I was still sat in my seat at DK, and then I just jumped ship and just took that leap of faith in spring 2019, and no regrets.
And how did you meet Tom? How did you and Tom kind of get together?
Yeah, so actually it was the equity trader at DK who met Tom. Was like, I've met this great guy, like he's you know, he's doing coaching, but he's also from the hedge fund space, and that's quite unusual. So I was like, great, I've got to meet this guy. And so yeah, Tom and I connected. Tom was actually a client of mine first, so we had that relationship before coming kind of business partners. So it's been like a really, really interesting and enjoyable journey. Like Tom's an amazing, you know Tom.
Yeah, no, Tom's
He's
brilliant.
A great guy.
And for you, what would you describe? What is executive coaching? Right, it's a really big word, and to simplify it, how would you describe executive coaching?
Yeah, so it's for executives and people in leadership roles, and it's about having someone to hold space and support you in your journey as a leader and develop your leadership and management skills. Yeah. So almost think of it as like, if you want to work out your muscles, you get a PT. If you want to work out and develop your management and leadership skills, you'd get an executive coach. But coaching can often be misunderstood in terms of like it's different to mentoring, and it's also different from leadership training.
How would you so difference in mentoring and coaching? What's the difference?
Yeah, so mentoring is more like, okay, this is what I've done, this is what's worked for me. I'm going to kind of tell you how to do this with my experience and what I know in that space. Yeah. And teaching is almost like sitting in a classroom, like being taught leadership models, like almost like the theory side of things. Whereas coaching is it's a partnership. Yeah. You come in and you stand.
It's true partnership.
It is true partnership.
Yeah.
Tom came up with that name, so full credit to him. Your job as a coach is to stand alongside the coachee and hold space for them to come up with their own solutions to their problems. And often, someone will come to us with a coaching objective. Say it's like, okay, I'm managing a team for the first time and I want to work on communication or whatever it is, or I'm going through a huge, or I want to grow my book if they're a kind of an investment professional. And so that's like the first kind of like top layer, and almost like think of it, we were talking about this earlier actually, in terms of an iceberg. So you've kind of got what's above the surface and what they kind of come to you initially with as the problem or the question that they want help answering. Yeah. And then when you get into it, there's always an underlying kind of deeper rooted question or challenge that they want help kind of unpacking and moving through, be it fear, insecurity, not feeling psychologically safe enough in their team or in their company. It's always kind of like twofold, and the real juice is kind of getting to that deeper rooted challenge so they can move forward and achieve their goals.
And interesting, you talked a little bit about right at the beginning about it's for people in leadership positions, and I guess sometimes where I'm sat and some of the kind of people I'm speaking to, I'm seeing actually some of the challenges happen when people are building their careers, and if they, we're seeing a lot of the hedge fund industry at the moment, bringing younger talent into senior places a lot earlier in their career than previous, and something that it genuinely concerns me because I look at it and I think they don't have the grounding. For me, I would almost be like, I see actually more of a need now that those people in those senior positions now need your services more because they've never had anyone, to your point, coach them through some of the things below the iceberg, but that you don't see. Do you feel that's fair? Like what time should you be accessing a coach in your career?
Look, I think, everyone would benefit from a coach. So it depends on the individual and the company.
When you're building your career, I do absolutely agree with you. I feel like there's genuinely that when you get to that leadership place, that's naturally when people start investing in your development and the areas that you should be focused on because you're in a place where you're going to make an impact in a business. But I guess as my own personal view is that actually, and I'm seeing those challenges from the work I do in the industry, whereas actually I personally feel that actually if some of this talent gets access to your skills earlier in their career, whether that's they're willing to invest in it or whether the company's willing to invest in them, that's a different conversation. But I sort of feel like it really benefits them as they start moving through those challenging situations that they're going to face in a senior place. So actually my view is should it not be early in your career that you're actually thinking about a coach than maybe you were, say, 10 years ago?
Absolutely. And look, if your company aren't willing to kind of make that investment maybe when you're younger in a more kind of junior role, then make the investment yourself. I think we were talking again earlier, I've invested thousands and thousands in my own kind of coaching and mentors. And you will see the return on investment. But ultimately, I totally agree with you. I think it's so valuable to invest in like young emerging talent and high potential individuals, because ultimately these are going to be the future leaders, right? And the more you invest in them and kind of can kind of help them develop their leadership skills and become the rising stars that you see them to be, then they'll be able to help with growing the business. Like there's so much upside to it. It doesn't have to be a C-suite only service. And we're seeing actually in the hedge fund space that they are starting to kind of wise up to this, and they are putting on kind of leadership development programs for that kind of exactly, the future leaders.
I think it's really important. I think it's really important. It's something that, which is why I've really enjoyed getting involved with you guys and seeing some of the stuff you do in terms of the sort of behind the scenes courses that you've run. I think it's really valuable, right? And it's I only see it as something that, and interestingly for me, and one of the reasons I really wanted to get you on here today was actually because I've had a lot of people reach out to me saying, look, I need a coach or something I'm thinking about, and people don't actually know where to go, right?
It can be a bit daunting.
Yeah, it is. But I'll come on to sort of a bit later actually about how to sort of reach out, people like yourself. I'll come into a little bit. The other thing I just want to just take the conversation slightly different direction around, I guess what are some of the challenges that people are coming to you with at the moment? And is there any common themes at the moment in some of the coaching that you're doing for your clients or individuals?
Yeah, I mean, we do see a lot of people that have been functional experts, like really good at their job, and they've, by no fault of their own, kind of like come up into a higher level position, and now they have a team and they're managing people for the first time, and they don't know how to do that or how to like get the best out of their team, especially if they've not experienced coaching themselves. They don't know how to be a coach-like leader and then help get the best out of their subordinates and their team. So there's
just to stop on that, out of interest, right? So do you think leadership is something that you can teach, or something you naturally are just a natural good leader? Thoughts around that?
I think there's some people are naturally, innately kind of like good leaders. That doesn't mean that they don't need to work on it. And likewise, I think you can learn certain skills. Definitely, there's also the difference between leadership and management. Leadership, I believe, is much more about like, can you inspire? Can you help people get behind your vision and like kind of almost like that, the wolf mentality. It's like being that kind of like alpha male kind of leader, but you're leading from the back and kind of like empowering your employees to kind of go out there and stretch themselves and live into their full potential, so they can kind of be a benefit to benefit the business the most.
What I found a little bit, Caroline, was that and something that I've always seen, and one of the reasons I think I'm in a job is because actually half the time there aren't good leaders in positions, right? And leadership is something that's actually quite hard to become good at, right? And I've always felt you're just either naturally good at it, and I've never thought you can actually be taught it. Have you? Would you say you've genuinely got specific examples where you've helped people become better leaders or better managers? I guess because there was a distinction in what you said earlier as well between leaders and managers, I guess, on that side.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time we love to argue for our own limitations, and a lot of people, if they've been told something or if they believe something like, oh, I'm not a natural leader. If you tell yourself that enough times, like it's gonna become true, right? So it's about stripping all of that like kind of BS away and actually, everyone, especially if they're in a leadership, they found themselves in a leadership role, they've got a superpower of some sort, and it's about helping them figure out what that is. And then ultimately, like, stay in your lane and be really good at what you do. And as a leader, you're able to then bring the people alongside you that kind of like fill in the gaps in terms of like, you live into your strengths and really kind of empower people to kind of nurture their strengths and kind of do more in that space. And then for the things that you're not good at, that's okay. You're not supposed to be good at absolutely everything. That's why me and Tom make a really good team, right? Because he's really good at certain things and sucks at others, and likewise for me. So it's about finding, and I think once people can realize that they don't have to be good at absolutely everything, and everyone has like a zone of genius, a superpower, whatever you want to call it, and start kind of like living into that in itself is empowering. And then, because leadership a lot of the time, it's about self-belief, it's about kind of, getting people behind what your vision is, aligning people and communication, how good's your listening. Most people don't know how to listen.
And do you, because you talked right at the beginning about having 17 coaches, right? So would you say if somebody rang me or you up and said, look, you know what, I've got into leadership position now, I really need help with that? Right. So do you then have a specific coach that actually, do you know what, we've got a real specialist that is just on leadership, or is that part of a bigger sort of coaching session that you do with an individual, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, initially I think, so there would be a conversation with either myself or Tom and be like, okay, that's very vague, right?
Okay,
in terms of like, I want help with my leadership. Okay, well, what part exactly?
Yeah.
And so
there's more layers to that.
Yeah, you know, kind of, and so once we kind of strip it back a bit and get a bit more clarity, okay, on what like particular areas of leadership do they want help on? You know, are they going through a transition? Like, are they are they a female leader who wants help finding her voice in the boardroom? Whatever it is, then we will kind of look at who we've got on our books, as it were, in terms of like the 17 coaches, and we would send through like probably 2 or 3 suggestions as to like, okay, have a read of these people's bios, because we think from what we've spoken about, these feel like the best fit. And then we would kick off with the first chemistry call. They'd select someone, and then we'd give them another one if they wanted. And so I think, you know, every coaching company should be offering no obligation chemistry calls, because how do you know if you're going to, like, the connection and the chemistry is going to be there? And that's so important with your coach.
And look, and I'll pick up on that last bit in a second. And just for me, what would be really interesting as well is like, but when you think about things that you're working on right now, from a client perspective or a company perspective, have you got a specific example you can kind of help us understand some of the work you're doing with a company and the stuff you do, and also from an individual perspective, an example of what you've been doing with an individual? Could you give me examples of some of the things you have been working on, client and individual, or company and individual, out of interest, in terms of projects that you're on?
Yeah, I mean, like, so we spoke about like high potential programs, and actually we're working on a leadership development program with a hedge fund where they've selected 9 individuals to kind of offer a 6-month coaching program, with also kind of like other bells and whistles around it, kind of external speakers, a big psychometric kind of testing, like to develop action plans as well. So there's that's one piece that we're kind of working on. That's obviously very client focused. And then in terms of, we also do have individuals who come to us who are self-funding. And so, for example, we've got a senior female leader that I'm working with, and that's predominantly around, you know, how can I learn to say no, and, you know, kind of just speak up for herself and have more boundaries. And various other things, like, but you know, without going too much into the specifics and the detail. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like, it's all different coaching assignments are different. And like I said, they may initially come with a set objective, and then when you kind of get into it, there's something else going on that needs to be addressed first.
And you know, in terms of thinking about you know, kind of situations where you when you go through an initial conversation with someone, how do you work through like strengths and weaknesses, right? And is that something that is there a method around that, or is it general conversation? Is it testing? What do you do to look at someone's sort of strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, I mean, there's various different ways you can kind of look at that. So psychometrics is one. We've got many different coaches that cover different models, whether it's Hogan, Myers-Briggs,
Hogan, Myers-Briggs a lot. From a screening perspective, from when we're putting talent forward, sometimes some clients use, you know, Myers-Briggs, I probably hear more, and then Hogan recently, but I've always sat there and going, is there not one that actually is the one that everyone says is the best way of screening someone or assessing someone's personality?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the company. Some people do be like, right, we want, you know, this kind of program, and we want the Hogan to kind of be the psychometrics that we use. So we'll definitely be guided by the company. If the company isn't sure, we might make suggestions, but ultimately it comes down to them. But one thing I do always say about psychometrics is that you know, you're all of it and you're none of it. And actually the reason that psychometrics are useful is to heighten your self-awareness. So you become more self-aware when you're out in the world, you know, like doing your thing, but actually when your tendencies or your kind of like shadow behavior comes out and it's to your detriment. So it's about, with that self-awareness from doing the psychometrics, you can see, okay, actually this is a pattern and this isn't like serving me that well. Maybe I should think about making a different choice or behaving differently. I don't like it when people do a psychometric and then almost like live into the label of it and just almost use it as an excuse even. I really enjoy doing 360s, and I find they're really powerful if you do them at the beginning and the end of an assignment, of like a coaching assignment, because you're getting genuine feedback.
You'll see a change in, so you do it at the beginning and then you'll do it at the end.
Yeah, and you'll see, because
Really?
and I think that's a really good way to measure, you know, the actual development and growth that's taken place. And also with a 360, if a client comes with specific goals or wants development in a certain area, we can tailor the questions so that the 360 is getting the tangible, relevant feedback that candidate or coachee needs to grow and evolve.
And look, I mean, you know, and that's, I mean, for me, you know, kind of obviously in my seat where they're looking at talent, assessing talent, working with clients in terms of trying to work through the different talent that we're trying to introduce. And, you know, I've been doing this for over 15 years now, and I've yet to see one specific method that is a perfect way of selecting a particular candidate for a role. Everyone's got a different approach to how they look at it, and there's no, you know, and you would think after 15 years, I go, I've got to put, this is the way to do it. I think it's really hard actually sometimes when you're using different tools to kind of assess talent. But you know, from your perspective, when you get involved, you're more looking at it from what are the areas we need to develop and what are the areas we need to focus on, right? And is that something that you typically use right at the beginning of a session with someone to kind of assess them from that side, or is that on the company or the individual to ask for it?
Yeah, you don't need it. Like kind of, these are nice tools to use, but obviously it depends on like client budget. Generally, if someone is self-funding, they won't necessarily do the 360 or a psychometric. I actually always get my private clients profiled on the Enneagram though, because again, I just find that quite...
Tell me about that.
Yes, the Enneagram is it's actually very, very ancient.
Okay.
And it was brought more into kind of like it was reformulated, if you like, into personality profiling. So there are numbers 1 to 9, and there's different kind of tendencies and behaviours depending on your number. So for example, I'm a 7, so they're called the enthusiast or the eternal child. And so
Glad you've got that out there to the world.
You know, we're really enthusiastic, we're very optimistic, but the kind of like dark side is that actually a lot of the time there's this underpinning of fear, but our kind of coping mechanism with that is to constantly seek new experiences, stimulations, or almost like run away from the fear that we're feeling. And so for example, for the 1, the underpinning is anger, and their tendencies are perfectionism, and they get really angry when they see like something that it feels unjust to them. So again, the only reason I do this is so clients can see when these tendencies are playing out and actually, you know, realize, oh, okay, that's kind of a pattern or a behavior that might not be serving me. Like, how can I respond differently?
And then what's the method of that? How do you do it? How is it long? Is it how long?
So there's different ways you can do it, but ultimately there's like 12 questions, and you get someone to answer them. So one will be like, okay, what would you like written on your tombstone? And so they give like quite deep insight as to like the person and the personality, and then from these 12 questions you can decipher what number they are.
Really?
Yeah.
I might take you up on that afterwards and try it
right.
myself. The tombstone one, I'd probably just put my date and end, and that's it, and my name, right? I don't want anything else.
Oh, interesting.
What does that
say?
What does that say about me? I don't know.
Very modest.
Very modest. Yeah, that's what I do. But anyway, no, fascinating. Like, because you know, again, that's a whole another area around how you kind of assess people and think about people, and again, like, you know, the reality is there's so many different methods out there to do it. But ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, you know, if you're wanting to invest in yourself, these are the kind of things that you need to understand if you're going to develop and evolve as a person. No, look, for me, Caroline, it's really like, we've talked about a whole range of stuff there, and a lot of it was for me all about trying to help people understand, executive coaching world, what it means, how it can impact you. And I think you've done brilliant in giving us that insight. I mean, for me, if somebody wants to access an executive coach, or you see this as something they want to find out more about, what are your top 3 tips? What would you say to people that are thinking about this? Whether it's people or whether it's let's talk about people, let's talk about companies, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to someone thinking about this?
I think on an individual level is like sit down and do some kind of self-reflection and some self-inquiry and think, if you're going to invest 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is into coaching, that's time, money and energy. So like, what do you want to get out of it? Like, where do you want to be at the end of that kind of 6 to 9 months?
Yeah.
And then the next thing is just to kind of like, be real with yourself and say, am I willing to take responsibility for what I'm currently kind of creating in my life that I don't like, and to unpack that and do the inner work and really kind of go where I maybe feel quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is just take the time to go out there, speak to a few different people, have a couple of different chemistry calls, and make sure you find a coach that feels like the right fit. Because you don't want to find yourself working with someone who you don't feel connected to and you feel like they're just going through the motions. And I think it's good to remember your coach can't do the work for you. Like, you're the one, you have to show up fully, and your coach should also show up fully for you. But all they can do is hold up the mirror and kind of reflect back to you what you're not seeing, or kind of like show you your blind spots and call you out and stuff. Yeah. They can't actually initiate the change in your life that you're looking for.
Yeah. No, and look, from my perspective, I feel that, and part of the reasons I've gone on a bit of a journey over the last 18 months or so trying to find out more about this is people ask me about it, I get asked about it, and actually before meeting people like yourself, I didn't really know where to take them or what advice to give them. And exactly what you said, I'd echo the same thing. Look, speak to your network, speak to people. Obviously, Caroline's here. Caroline's details will be, kind of posted as well. But ultimately, it is about reaching out, I think, as you said, to different people, finding out recommendations. And I think something you said, you touched on as well, which is actually, if you didn't get, for example, we engage with you as a kind of interested in kind of getting your executive coaching services, every coach should offer what did you define it as? As a
chemistry call.
Chemistry call,
Yeah, they'll vary from like 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the company or the coachee that you're kind of doing the session with. But you should get a good feel within that kind of first call as to whether this is someone that you feel comfortable with, that you feel you could open up to. You'll get a taster of their style. Okay, do you need someone more challenging and more direct? Is this person kind of like not pushing you enough, or actually are they pushing you too much and you need someone who's a bit more kind of like nurturing, empathetic, and kind of take you and peel back the onion slowly. So yeah.
And would you say it's worth, if you are thinking about this journey, would you say it's worth going to speak to 2 or 3, or is there sort of a certain number or that you should reach out to? Any views on that?
I think it depends. Like, it's like when you go shopping and you find the thing that you want in the first shop. True. That might be the case. So if you meet with someone and you really connect on that initial conversation, then just trust yourself. Ultimately as well, that's what we're trying to empower our coaches to do, is to just trust yourself more. But yeah, sometimes if you're not vibing with the first person that you meet, then it might take another couple. Don't just go with the first person if it doesn't feel right.
No, look, look, Caroline, some of the stuff you've said today, I really, really resonate with me, and I hope it resonates with a lot of people, because for me, I feel like something that I'm hugely passionate about is the fact that I don't think people understand this area enough. And for me, it's more the up and coming talent. And I feel it's that talent that should be thinking about this, should be investing in themselves. The problem is that I feel like we work in an industry where there isn't enough time, actually. Like we everything is very, hedge funds are so fast paced, private equities, there's so many deals going on that it is hard to just take stock for yourself. But hopefully from listening to you today, there are people out there that actually start to actually make the time, because ultimately that's the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think as well, like if you are too busy and you're rushed off your feet, you're the ones that need to get a coach more than anyone.
No,
it's like the people that say they don't have time to meditate. Well, you get double
no,
time.
But you hit the nail on the head as well, right? You know, if you're sat there rushing around, you don't have the time. Actually, that's where you need to invest in yourself. Look, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for coming. But before I let you go, like, is there any final anecdote, any final tip that you want to give anyone listening from your side?
I think in terms of if you are looking to kind of make significant changes or move into a different role, again, just do the self-reflection and ask yourself why you want that. Because ultimately, a lot of the time, we only want something because we think we're going to feel differently in the having of it. And yes, that might, if you change something in your external world, whether it's, relationship, kind of geographical location, new job, whatever it is, it might offer some short-term respite or feel good for a short period. But if you haven't done the inner work, everywhere you go, there you are. It's going to show up again later.
Keep focusing on yourself.
Yeah, you've got to go in. That's where the juice is.
Don't keep changing jobs. Don't talk to these recruiters. Come and talk to the coach. But no, you're absolutely right. And I absolutely echo that. I think, and that's part of the reason why I want to find people like yourself, because I do feel like people need to spend more time focusing on themselves before they think the solution is changing a job. I genuinely feel the same. So look, really, thanks very much.
Thanks for having
Really
us.
good talking to you. And look, we'll have Caroline's details posted. So if anyone does want to reach out to her or myself about anything that we've talked about, please do reach out, because it's something we're both really passionate about. Thank you.
Thanks, Mush.